good evening and welcome to the September 15th, 2022 meeting of the Grafton, Mass. Accessibility Advisory Commission. I'm Roger Trahan, Chair of the Commission, and I call this meeting to order. And as a preliminary matter, please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Alexis Henry.
I'm present and I can hear you.
Awesome. Bob Berger.
Bob Berger's here.
All right, Catherine Doran.
I am here.
Okay, Rob Paulson, Ellie.
Here as well.
Okay, and I'm seeing, all right, so Laura Deneen said she'd be joining us around 6:45-ish, and Christy Proctor around 7, at which time Rob will be handing off the taking of the minutes to her. And anticipated speakers on the agenda, I don't see anyone signed in, but Jen Anderson, our rec department director, was planning on calling in regarding that agenda item. And as far as the remote meeting script, even though you're new, Alexis, I'm not going to read all 3 pages. I think we're kind of familiar with these matters.
Yeah.
And so,
I read it before the meeting.
Awesome. And it's pretty long-winded. And so, starting with the first item on the agenda, welcome, Alexis Henry.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. Nice to meet you all.
And what we would have met you last month, but the series of Zoom meetings had run out, and I didn't even realize that there's no automatic feature to allow us to know in advance. So that was kind of frustrating. But so Alexis, anything you want to share or?
Sure. So I've been a long time resident of Grafton, been here, well, not here, I'm actually in Cape New Jersey, but my husband and I have been in Grafton since 1988. I'm almost completely retired, but I have been at UMass Chan Medical School. The medical school just changed its name, for about 20 years. And most of my work has been as a researcher and evaluator, but my focus has been disability. And access to healthcare for disability, sort of broadly, mostly focused around employment for people with disabilities and access to healthcare for people with disabilities. And my role as an evaluator, I've partnered a lot with the Massachusetts Disability Serving Agencies, because at the medical school, because we're the public medical school, we have a very strong partner with the state agencies. So I've done a lot of work with the Department of Mental Health, with the Mass Rehab Commission, with other disability serving agencies, Mass Health, to sort of help evaluate their services for primarily young adult and working age populations. So that's a little bit about me. I have some personal and family experience related to disability, and I'm really happy to be here and hope that I can contribute. And right now I'm interested in learning more about what this commission, sorry, I said committee, but I know it's a commission.
Thank you, Alexis. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on board. What I've noticed since the commission, has been revived in fall of 2019 is that we have been fortunate that in spite of occasional turnover, that we've had really high quality candidates and members such as yourself come forward to maintain that continuity. Not every committee or commission can say that. And so I'm really psyched that you're on board.
Oh, thanks. And Roger and I served on a board of directors for a community-based program in Worcester called Genesis Club. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but that's one of several programs in the state that serve people with lived experience of mental health conditions around a whole variety of stuff. But Roger and I had overlapping terms on the board of directors of that wonderful organization.
It's an awesome organization. And actually, Christy Proctor is actually quite familiar as someone in the community who's familiar with the organization and is a supporter of it as well. So yeah. And Laura Deneen, hello.
Hi, folks. How are you? Sorry, I'm a few minutes late here. Alexis, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
You as well.
All right. And so Rob, you added Laura as of 6:35?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. And other announcements, Mass Office on Disability, just a reminder on the ADA grant program for FY23 goes through the 30th of September. So I'm not aware of specifically being asked to offer support for by various departments from our commission as in the past, but that doesn't mean that that won't occur. But we're actually at the last meeting before the deadline. So I guess, Mr. Berger, is there anything that you may be aware of at all? And maybe this is a town administrative question as far as department heads and emails that may have gone out reminding department heads of the deadline or?
No.
Okay, I may just email Evan and remind him. It's my understanding from chatting with Amy Marr that this was brought up at the most recent school committee meeting. So it wouldn't surprise me if the school committee or pardon the superintendent, Dr. Cummings, applied for one. I know that one of the periodic requests had been the South Grafton Elementary School playground, but that has already now been funded. So since the school district has had their ADA self-eval complete, and that's online now, I'm sure they're going to be able to have some more concrete things to pick away at regarding the identified priorities of that report. So I'll email Evan just as a reminder so we don't miss opportunities, because I think that some people falsely thought that that it would be town departments competing with each other to the detriment of the other if multiple people from the same municipality applied, and that's not the case. Everything is looked upon and reviewed on its own merit. In the past, there have been towns that have had multiple awards within the same grant cycle. So it's not to the detriment of one that there are so-called competing grant requests by different departments. So, all right.
Can I just ask what
Yes.
role this commission plays relative to proposals that might come from the town to MOD?
It adds it's the request or the application is given additional weight if a disability commission or however named puts its endorsement behind a grant request, or actually in the past we've been a co-applicant, which is I guess more prominently on the application too. So we have with the library, with the Unitarian Universalist Society, with the schools, with the town, we've offered our support that has become part of the grant application. So
Thanks.
no, that it's a valid question. It's like, all right, what do we do? And so yeah, it's just extra points. So so the next item for announcements, so navigating vocational rehabilitation for parents and youth is 5:30 to 7 p.m. virtually on the 20th, which is next Tuesday. If anyone would Google the Mass Office on Disability, it navigates to the various webinars and such that are actually plentiful. And some have already occurred this month, and then there's others in the future that are related to the general public that many people may not be aware of, that they can sit in on. So that's something that's right around the corner. And then another reminder, and I had mentioned or we had discussed in a prior meeting, is the Disability Summit by the Mass Office on Disability, which is a hybrid summit. And that is Thursday, October 27th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. that you would sign up, register for in advance. And I know, Catherine, that, all right, so Catherine and Bob, you had attended last year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and Had you, Laura, or Rob? I forget.
I did not know.
I did not.
Okay, I know the two of you had, and it's a really good thing to attend if anyone can make that. If you go on the Mass Office on Disability website to register and can commit 3 hours, that'd be awesome. And although announcements aren't, no one needs to actually articulate them on the agenda, but I do as a reminder. So I, as always, Alexis, this is something I do, is open up the floor to any other announcements that people may have that are accessibility related, that you may be aware of, either in the community or elsewhere.
So can I just ask a question again? I mean, do we
Sure.
get involved in promoting like the navigating the VR system? Do we get involved in kind of getting the word out there to the community? Like this disability summit or the,
Yeah, we
No,
don't have a
just
web.
navigating the VR system is called.
I know. And here's the thing is that we don't have like a Facebook page, but we do have a web presence, but hardly anyone actually affirmatively goes to things like that. What I have done just on a personal basis and is I've used Facebook on my own wall, as well as All Things Grafton and Grafton Rise, to occasionally put out links that are accessibility related. And what I try to do is also for these meetings is advertise the links to the meeting packet, the document itself, and the Zoom link. But we really don't have a formal way or mechanism to do these things. I've just even if I weren't a member of this commission, I would just do it individually as a resident to advertise on social media, which seems to be the sort of universal way that things are advertised. Anyone else have any input on that? Or
I think that's right. I mean, I think that the most powerful, tool that we have is our own social media, whether that's Facebook page or Twitter or whatnot. I think that's the way to get it out.
Right. And I'll also mention that since we have changed the name of our commission and the charge, still hasn't made the change on the website. I'll address that with the town administrator's office. Is that during that recent meeting that Christy and Rob came before the select board, the select board has really been vocally more involved and aware and in promoting things, that are accessibility related. It's become a more prominent discussion. So that's another tool because more people watch the select board than us. So, hold on one second. I'm just looking here. Welcome, Christy.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Christy.
Hello.
Welcome.
All right. Yes, and Alexis is new and welcome aboard. So I had mentioned during the her welcome that you are also a friend of Genesis Club.
Oh, that's
Christy.
terrific.
Yeah, I don't know if our paths have crossed. You're at Quinsig, right? Are you in the are you familiar with Work Without Limits at UMIT? So that's an initiative that I was part of the team that launched that initially. I'm almost totally retired now, but I think that I know that I've heard your name before.
Well, we met at a Genesis Club fundraiser back in 2019.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It seems like 10 years ago, but it was only 3 because of COVID years, right? But so welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Christy,
I'm happy
Alexis
to be
and
here.
I had overlapped a few years on the Genesis board. So, so at this point, any other announcements? And if not, what I will then do is starting with just external correspondence. Maybe this would be a good segue for Rob to hand things off to Christy.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
Very welcome. My pleasure. I'll email you after with the other notes so they can be all together. Is that
Yeah.
appropriate?
Yep, perfect.
Hold on one second. We'll get on to that. All right. Just checking something. All right. Okay. So item 2 on the agenda, external correspondence. So this has been, as far as the Mass Architectural Access Board, AAB, regarding the Montgomery Wood of the Grafton Land Trust. Because we were CC'd on this, I have included it as part of the meeting packet. So I guess there were the certain variances, without getting into detail, certain variances were approved, and one was given until November, and I forget which one that was. And Alexis, that is at the bottom of Wheeler Road, that 5 parking spot area, that there was some work done to mitigate some flooding, but then it also was considered work performed by the Architectural Access Board after a citizen complaint. So they've been required to sort of address accessibility issues, albeit at just the trailhead area. So, and Mr. Berger, do you have any other input on that? It really has been sort of like because it's not a town, it's not town owned, we've been CC'd on it because Mr. Berger is the ADA coordinator in town. He's CC'd on it, and we're CC'd as a commission. And then the local independent living center, the Center for Living and Working in Worcester, is also CC'd on these matters. So did anything else come your way, Bob,
No.
on this? Yeah.
And with this, I'm just sitting back and waiting to see how it's going to play out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing is too, is that, I feel bad. The Grafton Land Trust is sort of in a tight spot because they're dealing with riverfront and conservation issues, as well as now, since that 6-lot subdivision right immediately above it is flowing water and silt and all sorts of things onto the property. And so whatever they may mitigate could be literally washed away. And so it's just a bad spot, and just like the perfect storm that has occurred there. And so I guess we'll wait that out, but to the extent that we continue to be CC'd on this, I will consider it as external correspondence, and we'll include it in the meeting packet. So does anyone else have any comments on this particular correspondence? Okay. All right, update. Grafton Common Parks, Fields, Trails. All right, so 3A, I put that as a placeholder. All right, Grafton Historic District Commission regarding the bandstand and the elevated walkway change order, which was full height railings. That got the select board approved that change order request 2 days ago on the 13th in their meeting. So that really doesn't need to be discussed unless people have comments. I guess, Mr. Berger, I know that you had back and forth with Paul and such. Everything seems okay regarding I guess the full height, because it's an elevated walkway, the full height wasn't required, but out of an abundance of caution, it was part of the change order and adds an additional level of safety that there's not that 2-foot drop off.
Yeah, I haven't seen the updated plans. They're in my inbox.
Okay.
I'll review them soon.
All
And
right.
again, as long as it's under that 5%, then it is just a walkway, and it's not required.
Right. And I'm hoping that it remains, as far as it being considered the accessibility police, all it has to be is just a little bit over, and then it's like, now it's a ramp. And so Paul said on Tuesday that it's pressure treated wood. I'm assuming that if whatever width, I'm not familiar with how wide or narrow something has to be to grip. and whether the perimeter around the bandstand, if that is considered up to code by AAB standards, and the full height railings on the elevated walkway are to the same spec, and then it goes without saying that those railings are up to code.
Well, I really don't want to get into code in this format.
Okay.
The bandstand is considered historic. So they can take that down and rebuild that particular architectural feature of the bandstand without making it the 42 inches.
All right.
And it's also, if I'm not mistaken, it's less than 30 inches from the floor to grade.
Oh, okay. So therefore, they wouldn't be required to put anything anyway because of the height?
Yeah, but if, usually the rule of thumb is if you build something, it's going to meet today's standards.
Right.
So even if they didn't need it and they were going to put something there new, then it would have to be the 42 and the spaces would have to be proper.
Okay.
But because we have a letter and we reviewed it and I talked to the state about it too, that this particular feature of the bandstand is historic. So they're repairing it and or replacing it with a like.
So does the elevated walkway get tagged onto that historic aspect?
Absolutely not. No,
No.
that's a
Okay.
new feature.
Okay. All right.
So that would just have to meet today's standards for new construction.
Okay. And because it's considered an elevated walkway, it actually didn't require anything, but out of an abundance of caution, that was added to the change order.
Right.
Okay. All right. So does anyone have any other comments regarding the change order regarding the bandstand? Yes, Christy.
Yes, Mr. Trahan, any word or any speculation about the timeline for completion?
I don't know, because I think what happened is it had to do with the retaining wall even though because of the way it wrapped around and they're putting a retaining wall up. And so I'm not familiar with what the ETA is on that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And honestly, I think as much as it may be a small area, I think there should be a ribbon cutting ceremony. That's just my opinion. Okay. I think this is an important feature that would call attention to accessibility, however small the space it is.
That would really be nice.
Yeah, I would like that. So
Plus those of us who live at the common, near the common.
right,
It's
you
been a
live like right
long time. I'm just a block from it. Been
Right.
watching this for a long time.
Yes. So, all right. So, I see. Okay, attendees. Now we have Jen Anderson on board for 3B. Jen Anderson, director of our recreation department, and I'd invited Leah Cameron, conservation agent. It was last minute, but those two, both Jen and Leah, are working closely with each other regarding the 95 North Street plans and funding for the is it Engvall? What is the last name of the property? I forget. So Jen Anderson, are you all right? So allowed to talk.
All right.
Jen.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So so within the meeting packet, what I ended up doing, hold on one second, is I included a few things. I included I am working in such tight quarters, you have no idea. All right, so starting with page 41 of the meeting packet, Jen Anderson, you on the 29th of July had emailed me and Leah regarding that you had seeking community preservation funds as part of the funding mechanism for this particular project, and that it would be the CPA application project narrative was included, the questionnaire that they require. And what I also did is the select board just recently came out with their draft of the town meeting warrant for Monday, October 17th, 2022. So the first article is about funding, and then the second article is more administrative about applying for a grant. So Jen, if you could at high level to speak to your request for funding and the amounts and how it may be offset by grant monies.
Yeah, so does everyone feel like they have a background on what the project is, or does anyone want me to kind of give a brief summary of where we're at?
I would ask just to give a brief summary in case people are watching this and haven't heard about it. Jen, that would be great.
Yes, so conservation and recreation have been working, the staff along with the commission. If you recall, the Enval family donated this parcel and for the purpose of a passive recreation park, and the town accepted that in 2020 and spring, summer, June 2020. And then the town approved CPA funding for the design of the park in fall of 2021. So we've been through the community, meeting process, online surveys, working with town departments for the design. And we're excited to be able to accomplish, numerous goals of the CPC plan, the open space and recreation plan, and obviously meeting accessibility there as well, and offering something that would really be the first in town with that, with the ADA accessible multi-use loop. So some of the amenities that are going to be there are a dedicated parking area with accessible spaces, the multi-use loop for ADA accessibility, shaded picnic areas, hiking and snowshoe trails, pollinator and mowed meadows, informal nature play, and interpretive signage. So we really feel like we're going to be able to serve the entire population of Grafton, encourage youth group gatherings, and have some great educational and programming opportunities. So the total CPA request for this project is a little over $685,000. That's site prep and site amenities, construction, soft costs, but it's reflective of over $200,000 in in-kind work and contributing funds from both recreation and conservation that account for almost 23% of the cost. And this project would also be eligible for a number of grants, including the land and water conservation funds, and that would be up to $750,000, and the Mass Office of Disability grant for up to $250,000. And so we, have CPC approval for the funding. We have the article for town meeting that we're looking to, hopefully gather support for, which we do from recreation and conservation and historical commission, and looking for you as well. And reach out to the land trust and such. We're going in front of the select board next Tuesday night to present the project, and as well have a public informational meeting on October 6th prior to town meeting.
So on this, does anyone have any questions for Jen? All right, so I will mention that, and I don't have this on a shared screen, but I have it. I'm the paper guy, right? Back in August of 2020, so we're going back just 2 years. Back on August 20th of 2020, which was my birthday, we had sent at that time to Mr. Stevens, then chair of the Grafton Community Preservation Commission. We had voted to support CPC requests for funds. Just looking at this, and it was grant request, okay. But also there was a separate motion and letter and endorsement that was addressed to you, Jen, that was a more generic letter that where we voted for your request for it was the Mass Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities, PARC Park Grant Program, or any other grants as they become available. So it's we kind of wrote a blank check 2 years ago. So I think it would be beneficial twofold to update that in the form of a motion and a vote and a letter. But also, Jen, you had mentioned that, you know, it's something that we wouldn't need to, on that particular endorsement, necessarily identify specific specific projects. Am I right that the two things you would be looking for is, one, support for your requested town meeting, and for us to even speak on town meeting floor to remind the public that, you know, if we vote in favor of this, that we're putting our support behind it. And then the second being that town meeting, there was a mechanism, I guess, where town meeting wasn't required to vote on your request for a grant app, but it was the mechanism by which, I guess, grant monies, if awarded, would be spent prior to CPC monies. Is that correct, Jen?
No, the town does need to vote on the fact that we can apply for grants. And so that's why that it is an article. It's because it's a reimbursement grant. So we need to, as a town, fully support the funding, 100% of the funding. And then we would get reimbursement. So yeah, whenever that came through, if we were to get anything, it would go back to CBC. Like you said, I don't know if it's really, it would come off the top, but whatever we got would go back to them into the, you know, into the pot here.
Okay. So I'm thinking that two motions would be in order. One for the Accessibility Advisory Commission to support the requests for funds, kind of at a loss for words, as far as at town meeting, or not sure whether we narrow ourselves into town meeting, but that the Accessibility Advisory Commission endorse the
article?
request for town
Sorry, Roger.
funds.
Yeah, I don't know
Request
if
the
it's
article,
just
yeah.
construction of the park and you know, endorsing that that the project is, you know, meeting what you feel is, you know, and offering something to, you know, all ages and abilities in town, and that you feel it meets your criteria for what's doing. And if I could just, for the grant part itself, for the letter, I think what I was saying was, I think it would have to say you support this specific project, but like you said before, any like available grant opportunities, because right now we've seen these two, there might be another one. So I just didn't want to be like pigeonholed, you know, into certain grants, but obviously that you support the project applying for grants as opportunities come.
Okay, all right. So is it okay that be included in one letter, or would it also, I mean, I'm thinking that the first endorsement could be relative to town meeting, okay? The town meeting warrant article, and include that it includes our support for you applying for, you know, any and all grants, but also maybe a separate letter that kind of duplicates the second piece of the first letter, that allows you to have a sort of generic blank check endorsement for other types of accessibility projects that doesn't necessarily mention 95. In other words, it would be for any future projects as well. I don't know. Do you think one letter will cover it, or?
I think one letter for this project would cover it, but I think that you know, we want to make sure that you're specifically supporting any project that we're going for a grant, right? That we have your backing for the project we're doing.
Okay.
Before we apply for a grant.
Okay, so then tonight we only need to vote on something that pertains to 95 North Street. Am I right, Jen?
Excuse me, sorry, yes, but I think endorsing the project, and then also endorsing us to proceed with grant opportunities.
Okay. Endorse project and endorse applying for grants. All right, and I'll mention that aside from those two components of a motion that I will entertain, in the August 2021 regarding the CPC funds for the 6 parks, the final paragraph of the letter said the following, and I'll bounce this off of you. This project is also consistent with our commission's charge, which includes assuring that all people in Grafton have an equal opportunity to participate in all functions involved in living, working, and enjoying recreation activities. It was sort of a generic statement, which was reasonably encompassing. So I don't, how does that sound as a component of a letter aside from the first 2 pieces that you required, Jen, and the rest of the commission?
No, I think that's in line as anyone, like all the other commissions, like Historical Commission have acknowledged, and that we're working for the Land Trust, knowledge that it aligns with each of your charges. And so the fact that we're able to, show that we're accomplishing multiple goals between multiple,
Right.
boards and committees is really great. And so I think that wording works.
All right, cool. Let me ask you then, who, and this always seems to be something I think the commission will agree that I am often get stuck on who should it be addressed to and who should be copied on it. So I'll open that up. It's been a long day for me, so maybe there are sharper minds out there than I that can kind of land on not having too exhaustive a list, but would it go to CPC and CC'd to you and select board and town administrator? I mean,
I'm not sure about to CPC, because I think it's a general letter of support, right? Not just for it using CPC funding, but the project itself. So what did you say in the last one for?
Okay,
the ADA?
all right, in the last one, hold on a second. What I had said at that particular meeting, that we had voted unanimously in support of Grafton Recreation Department's grant request to Community Preservation Committee to fund ADA accessible routes and surfacing in various parks and playgrounds. This item will be discussed, and I named the date of the following meeting in the hopes that it will be placed on the warrant at this October's town meeting, meaning that it hadn't been placed. Right now, the draft warrant is out there and it is actually on there. And I simply, in the letter, named the various parks for which work was going to be done, the link to our ADA self-eval and transition plan, and then ended with the paragraph about that the project was consistent with our charge. So, so what happened is it was in advance. You were looking at that time, it was early enough in the game where, Jen, you were looking for the CPC's sign on to then put it on the warrant. But you're now beyond that point where if they weren't on board, it wouldn't.
Right, so I was saying we do have support, of the CPC
Right.
funding. So I think you change it, it's something of, that your support of CPC funding of the construction of the park, or maybe in general, just construction of the park. But I like that last part too, like consistent with your charge.
So who's I'm just looking at the draft.
But I mean, I don't know if it's to recreation and conservation commissions, because that's who will be applying for the grant and that's who's putting forth the article.
Well, actually, the first article is being submitted by Community Preservation Committee. The second one regarding the park grant is submitted by Rec Department and Conservation. So there are, so So I don't know if the three people that we write, who is this addressed to? Is it, because it combines both articles and it's Community Preservation Committee, Recreation Department and Conservation Department are the committee and two respective departments that comprise the sponsors of the respective articles. So is it, I guess,
I know,
I
so I'm
mean,
wondering if it's more like select board or, I mean, Bob, I don't know if you have any ideas, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, if all else fails, select board and then CC to all of the commissions, right? I mean, it'll still get to where it needs to get to.
right, okay,
And that's just, you know, that just might be an easier way here.
so to select board and then CC the Community Preservation Committee, Rec Department, Conservation Commission. Okay. I know that we don't need to do this, but I know that Finance Committee is an organization or a committee that is charged with making recommendations on all the town meeting warrant articles. So I don't necessarily think well, I guess we could put Finance Committee as well, because they will necessarily be weighing in on this and putting their.
I was thinking that too, but I think that's fine if you don't, because I mean, no one else has. It's just the fact that we would be able to produce these letters from all these commissions to show
That's right.
them
Yeah.
as part of their consideration, you know?
Yeah, we don't need to necessarily weigh them down with additional paperwork even before they've even reviewed. I mean, the warrant hasn't even been signed, so. All right, then.
Jen, I'm sorry to interrupt, Roger. Do we know who the Historical Commission addressed their letter to?
Actually, I don't, because I should be getting it tomorrow,
Okay.
but I yeah. So I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Great, all right, thank you.
All right, then I will ask among you, the person who feels they're sharpest and most creative in their wording, to offer I will entertain a motion regarding the an endorse that includes endorsement of the project and endorsement for, I guess, Rec Department and Conservation Commission applying for grants, or is it just Rec that's applying for grants?
No, well, it might have to come from the Conservation Commission, but yeah, that we would both, MOD would come from both of us, so.
Okay.
Can I just ask for a point of order? Because I feel like I have two actions that I've been taking notes on.
Okay.
One will be the motion to endorse the request for funds for an accessible outdoor recreation space at 95 North Street and to proceed with grant opportunities. Then, second, we have a motion for Roger to write a letter of support for the project to the CPC for funding. Then another letter will be sent to the select board CCing the Rec Department and Conservation Department who are sponsoring the town meeting articles.
I think you can consolidate it into one motion.
Okay.
And further that, blah, blah,
Okay.
blah, and further that. So it's all, so we're not parsing it out. And so I guess it's basically to endorse the project and endorse applying for Rec Department and Conservation Commission to, not Conservation Commission, Conservation Department or?
Department.
Okay, so Conservation, so Rec Department and Conservation Department to apply for grants, and further that Accessibility Advisory Commission Chair, you know, write various letters. So I guess I'll entertain a motion and we can see how that sounds. Rob, do you have your word nerd hat on?
I sure don't. I'm hoping Christie's been typing all that out though.
I'm ready to go. I'm popping names into the slots. Okay, it's really Mad Lib time here.
All
Who's
right.
seconding? Catherine? I'm sorry.
No, go for it. I move that we endorse the project, applying for grants, and Roger to write the letters accordingly.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Laura.
And now we can wordsmith it if we need to.
Okay, yeah. That, all right, so,
Want me to share what I have on my screen?
yeah, please.
Oh, thanks,
please.
Lou, or
Because
Christine.
you guys have really been going on for a little bit. Could you please, Roger, enable my screen
Oh,
sharing?
good, yeah, all right,
thanks.
so share screen,
And Jen, I hope you can see this, right?
all right, who can start sharing with someone else too? All right, so I think we're all set on that.
Yep, I've got it. Thank
And
you.
you know what a point of order here, what I forgot to do is, and I forget how to do it. If for some freaky reason I get disconnected, I did not allow anyone else yet to be host or co-host. How do I do that? I forget how I do that.
You go to Rob Polsinelli's name and you hit the arrow to the right, and
Yeah.
then you select make co-host.
You have gotten a raise, Rob. You have gotten a promotion, Mr. Co-host.
Fantastic, thanks.
All right, there you are. Okay.
So I may have misunderstood. The letter of support. Is it to this, is it to the CPC?
No, I think we agreed that it would be to the select board and to copy the Community Preservation Commission or committee, CPC, the rec department director, Jen, and the conservation department, Leah, right?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
one letter.
One
So
letter.
we're only doing one letter, not two.
Yeah, one
Correct.
letter which combines support for putting weight behind the endorsing the project, and then also endorsing the application by rec department and conservation department for any related grants. And so I mean, do we get into the nitty gritty of also necessarily needing to support that it's CPC funds, or just that we support this project?
Well, yeah, support the project or support the article, because the article actually details
Okay,
where the funding goes, right?
yeah,
Or, excuse me, funding comes from.
town meeting request.
Right.
The fall 2022 town meeting request, I guess first line.
Christy, God bless you for doing this.
I'm sorry. I am so like looking at my editing skills. I'm sorry. Rob Polsinelli, can you say it again for me, Rob, please?
Wait, oh, wait, go ahead, Roger, that was your,
No, that was me. It was Rob Paulson. I made a motion to endorse the, I guess, fall 2022
Thank you.
town meeting request. And then it's for funds for an accessible outdoor recreation space in 95 North Street. And
You have an article number, or it's too early for that?
no, they haven't numbered them yet.
Yeah, it's been a little back and forth.
No, thank you.
And just
for
to be
that. That's an
consistent,
excellent question.
yep,
uh,
one line.
just to be consistent, can we say accessible passive recreation park?
I guess.
No, we can't.
That's the line. You finally.
I
hit
never
it.
know
We
where
need
the
to take a
Bob
vote
Burgers.
on that.
Are you
Oh,
serious or
okay.
joking about that? I never know. Oh,
How's that? Do I say Enville property again? Or is 95 North Street code?
no, I think we know that it's the address. I mean, regardless of whether we name it Engvall property.
All right. I'm gonna nitpick a little bit. Why are we putting passive here based upon our notes? Like, I'm not sure what that adds. So as we
Yeah.
come in as a commission endorsing it, and again, I can be swayed, but when I look at it, right? Well, recreation park. Why
No,
are we
yeah,
putting?
and that's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay, Laura, with your comments to remove that. What happened is the discussion all along has been framed that the Engval will and estate specifically confined it to passive recreation. So that's where the term passive recreation has sort of followed all of
Mhm.
our discussions regarding this piece of property.
It's
Yep.
actually called that on the town website. I just was Googling it on my phone to get, it's called the Passive Recreation Park
Okay.
on the town website.
Yeah, no, but to Laura's point, it may be a moot point to necessarily call it a passive use the term passive. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't want to get stuck in the weeds regarding having this particular motion take all night, because
Right,
I'll
right,
admit,
right.
I can be wordy and I think the worst thing would be if everyone follows suit with my wordiness. That would be the kiss of death.
Yeah, for me, I think passive should be taken out. I mean, it should say accessible recreation park. But
I'm okay. I'm
that's
okay with
just me.
removing the word passive. Is everyone okay with removing the word passive? It's really neither here nor there. It's just the fact that we're adding accessible recreational opportunities for people in town.
Right. From our perspective.
Mr. Chair, but
Yes.
it's in line with what Jen has been asking for.
Okay. All
So
right.
I could go, I don't really want to go either way. I think it's worded properly right now because that's in line what everybody's been looking at.
Okay.
It's kind of the same thing though, Bob. I mean, when you're looking at it, what does that add? I mean, we're talking about the same thing, but when I'm reading it as someone that's not on this commission, right? Someone that maybe not following it 1,000%. And again, I mean, whatever the commission wants, but I am going to push back on that. I would question what they're talking about with passive. So for me, I just pull it out. It's very clear that it's an accessible recreation park.
And
Right.
you know what?
So,
Too, if I could add to what you're saying, Laura, is that I guess it's incorporated by reference or included by reference that when we talk about fall 2022 town meeting requests, I think the warrant article itself does speak to passive, right?
It does.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
so even if
It
we
does.
don't put the word passive in there, we are actually by endorsement, by reference to fall 2022 town meeting. It speaks to, no, does it include passive, the term
Because-
passive?
Yeah, fund the creation of a passive recreational park.
Yeah, and so we can't remove the article's wording. So I'm okay with removing the word passive, but Laura, by virtue of endorsing the article, we are endorsing passive just because the word passive is included in the article itself.
yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, I'm all for this,
Okay.
but when I'm reading it as a layperson,
Okay.
it doesn't make sense to me, folks.
So the word, by
No.
putting the word passive in there, it would be a duplication then. Because we're endorsing by virtue of endorsing the article that contains the word passive recreation park. It is a matter of endorsement. It's just not being worded in the actual letter itself. Is everyone okay then with that?
I'm not going to argue.
All right. I mean, an accessible recreation park is necessarily one that is passive once it references fall 2022 town meeting. Because the
Well,
article.
what does Jen say? She's still on the phone or did she run
Jen.
away?
No, I'm here.
Jen.
Sorry to.
Yeah,
come.
yeah. You keep on forgetting about Jen. Jen, what are your thoughts?
No, it was just because that's the language and kind of the name, and just to be consistent of what it's, how it's being referenced everywhere is all I was thinking. I understand Laura's point, completely. If So I don't know how you guys feel their way. I just think my idea was just that it was the same language that's been out there and how it's been
Mhm.
referenced.
And Mr. Chair, I agree that it should stay in there, but you know,
I mean,
I'm gonna vote for it either with it or without it.
All right, what are your thoughts, Laura? Because if you're insisting on the word passive and others are okay with it being removed, I would be forced to take a separate vote, or a sort of an
Mhm.
amendment to the main motion. Now we're talking town meeting, right? An amendment to the main motion and vote on whether to include the word passive or not. And I hate getting in the weeds regarding procedural matters, and I try to have a lot of these things be more by consensus. So what are your thoughts, Laura? How
So I'm going to say
insisting
this
on-
again, and
Okay.
clearly, you know, if someone is insistent, like Bob, if you're insistent on it, that's fine. What I'm saying is, if a layperson is reading this, they're not going to understand what passive means, right? So we're all in the weeds here because we all understand what's going on within the town, but a lot of people aren't. Just to be very, very clear, right? So that's why I'm saying passive out. It's very clear about accessible park, like it's very clear what that is. But if I'm going and I'm going to town meeting, whatever, my first question is going to say what's passive, and I'm pulling on like I'm putting on my legal hat now. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, it should be out because it doesn't make sense based upon this. However, Bob, if you're insistent upon it, it sounds like Jen kind of is okay either way. I'm not going to go down this route and fight. I'm just going to say that as far as I'm concerned, it should not be in there because there's no explanation if you haven't read the details. Now, we can all say, well, everybody should be reading the details, da-da-da. They don't. Okay. So that's my point. I'm not going to get into the weeds with you, Bob. So,
All right, Bob, what you would raise your
Right.
hand?
I did. Every other, the article, the funding, they all have the word passive in it. So even if we take the word passive out, which again, I don't care if we take the word passive out, and I don't think we should be, wasting too much time on this, but it's only going to be our one letter out of many. So I know, but you don't want the word passive in there, but that's only ours, but it's going to be everywhere else. It's going to be on the funding. It's going to be on the select board. It's going to be in town meeting warrant. So it's going to be in at least 3 documents, but it won't be in ours.
And to both of your points, and maybe stepping aside for a second, I think it's crucial that these type of letters have unanimous support. And I guess, Laura, if the word passive were in there, do you find yourself being a possibly the lone no vote? I would hate to see a split vote on this, because then that brings up, well, wait a minute, the Accessibility Advisory Commission wasn't even unanimous on that. And that,
I just, yeah.
yeah, and so I think that sends an equally loud message that if there's one person that was against an endorsement, they don't know why. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I get it. And I guess I'd push back, Bob, to what does he know that letters are going to be, unless, right? Have you seen the letters? I'm not sure. But as far as I'm concerned, no, I'm just trying to be very, very, transparent here,
Mhm.
that it doesn't make sense unless you understand the background, and some people won't. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to be very, very clear about that. That's all.
Roger.
Jen, yeah, who's talking?
It's me, it's Jen.
Yeah.
I think another way to look at it, and I don't want to downplay this at all, but the park is not fully accessible. A large portion is parking, the loop, the shade structure, picnic tables, benching, but there's a section of trail that will be hard packed, dirt, but not, as that loop is. So I think maybe even calling it an accessible park, I don't know if that is misleading in the fact that it's not a fully accessible park.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
All right.
so saying it's accessible park, I don't know if that for the layperson is, I'm just trying to look at it with like devil's advocate a little bit. If that is, I don't want that to be misleading.
So Jen, to your point then, I guess, Christy, could you pull that Word document
Oh,
up?
I'd be happy to.
And maybe we could say a,
I mean, I like that you want to acknowledge that it is accessible, but if you support the passive recreation park at 95 North, that is the language that is being used. But Laura's point is valid. It is.
so to request for funds to add accessibility features.
And Christy,
that doesn't
actually,
include
Alexis had her hand up first.
It doesn't
All right,
include the whole
Alexis.
act.
Oh, I didn't even see that little hand. I was looking at the wording.
So sorry, I mean, this is my first meeting, but listening to this conversation, I have a couple of thoughts. One is, it seems to me there's value in being consistent with the language as the project is described in the article in the website. I mean, our document there, if our minutes want to reference, I mean, I'm looking at the description of the project on the town website right now. And I guess it seems important that if we are going to support this project, that we're consistent with the language that's currently being used. If there's a question that the commission has about the naming, I mean, right now it's being called a thing. This may or may not be the right descriptors once the park is once the thing moves forward. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And does this commission have some concerns or some concerns about how fully accessible this park is going to be? The term passive, again, this is what the thing is being called right now. And if we want to support it, it seems to me that being consistent with that terminology would be important. I think it would be confusing if our letter is not the same as all the other letters. But then if this commission has some concerns about this project in terms of its full accessibility, that seems to me to be a separate issue.
And Roger, I think you can point out the accessibility portion when as part of the grant, well, I guess this is one letter, right? That would, I guess, for the grants as well. So, did it say, Christy, that the charge as well, that it meets that kind of line about meeting something of your charge?
No, we're going to say though that it does align with the charge to make places in the town as accessible as possible. And what you just asked me just goes really into where we have talked about this before when we had issues come up from the library and other places. You design for the most broadest population possible. And that's what you're doing, Jen. You're trying to make this possibly, 80% accessible. We know there's no 100% accessible because even within disability purposes, you always have things that are not fully compatible with each other. But for the most part, you are, the attempt and the design purview is to make it as accessible as possible. So to define this as 100% accessible is not attainable. It's not realistic. So for our commission or advisory committee, I think we all understand accessible means to the fullest extent possible.
I know. So do we just say that you're in support of the passive recreation park and blah, blah, blah at some point, with it being in line with your, accessible, whatever goals or the committee's charge,
So
like
let me
that
ask,
sort of thing.
so let me ask you this, and this may be splitting, not splitting hairs, but to maybe address Laura's concern. Would it be, all right, so I think Christy, if you could scroll back up a little bit. All right, so our actions, Rob, as far as the motion itself,
Sure.
we'll scroll back down. I'm sorry, I had to get too far. All right, Rob Paulson, made a motion. All right, to endorse the fall 2020 town meeting request for funds, which are being described as an accessible passive recreation park. In other words, we're not necessarily, we would be referencing that it's being referred to as a passive recreation park. We're not creating the language, but we're simply acknowledging that it's being referred to as a passive recreation park without necessarily saying that we're calling it that, or that we're limiting ourselves to that, or that's, that we don't need to explain anything other than that the records indicate that this is being referred to as a passive recreation park. Do you know what I know it may seem like a distinction without a difference, but I think
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I think what you should do, no, you don't move. You're making me dizzy because I lost my spot now. Request for funds for the article, right? Not for for the article.
Okay.
We need another word in there, but we're getting closer. Because now we're referring everything that we're talking about to this article that doesn't have a number.
Right.
Excellent, pertaining to. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Well done,
So,
Christie.
so Laura, and this is what, thank you, Bob, for filling in the words that my mind was going exactly in the direction that you're speaking of. And so now, Laura, if people have a question about passive, that basically it's referencing the wording of the article. And then, so they need to go to the article itself to then put that into context. In other words, that's not some hanging chad. We're simply saying, this is what the article says, and we're referring to the article. Laura?
Yeah, if we tie it back to the article, that's fine,
Okay,
for sure. Because I don't
Okay.
know what passive means, folks.
right.
And I think a lot of people don't know what passive means based upon what they're trying to say here.
Okay.
So if we're tying it back to an article, and yes, I've
Right.
read it all, but I'm still questioning, what does passive mean?
Okay,
So
and to your point, I would say that the warrant article doesn't exist in a vacuum. There are going to be public meetings regarding this. There's going to be information online that further defines what passive is. There's been meetings thus far, and there's information posted online currently, which describes what passive is. There will be discussions and public hearings by the Finance Committee that will further define the scope of what this is and what it isn't. And it will also be discussed on town meeting floor what it is and what it isn't. So I think that as much as I do appreciate your concern, Laura, that what is passive, it's a bunch of things, a bunch of sources of information that come together that include meetings and documentations of those meetings and hearings and town meeting itself, which will really nail down what it is and what it isn't. And the public has many opportunities and already has to ask that question. So are you okay that now that, Laura, that it includes the reference to the article? Are you okay then with including the word passive in the fact that it now references the article and isn't just coming from us?
as long as it's referencing the article,
Okay,
and within the article, I know that is, as long as it's defines passive.
well, here's the thing, and I'll take a step back and put my former moderator cap on. Warrant articles only have to describe things in general terms. They are not required to describe what the main motion is. Sometimes warrant articles, which call upon and basically box in the scope of the discussion and the votes or main motions, don't have to get into details, okay? And so there never has been, except possibly with specific like zoning articles and some other articles, where the warrant article itself has to include all the details. The warrant articles by definition are describing in general terms what is going to be discussed at the meeting, okay? Some petitioners choose to add details, okay? Oftentimes you see greater details in CPC articles. But warrant articles by definition I wouldn't expect them to include definitions unless they were voting on something which necessarily included definitions, like a bylaw change or something like that. And so that's the distinction between the more broad warrant language and sometimes the more detailed language that has to be in a main motion. That may sound like I'm getting in the weeds, but warrant articles can be one sentence, you know, as long as they warn the voters that something's going to be discussed, you can get into greater detail on town meeting floor and amend things to, you know, however you want. And so are you expecting that somehow warrant articles would necessarily include definitions, Laura, or?
I'm just trying to understand what passive means. I mean,
Mhm.
Jen, is there a definition of passive, or you're just using that kind of as an adjective?
Isn't that about how it's used?
It is because active is considered, you know, athletic fields and playgrounds in structured, you know, built facilities. Passive is what we're doing here, you know, picnicking and open space and trails and of the like. So it's a common term when it comes to like different plans, right? But yeah, between open space or of the like. But to a layperson, I guess I don't know, but we've never had to get this, you know.
I mean, I'm okay
Welcome
with,
to our meeting.
I would like, I'm hoping to wrap up this discussion and vote in the next 5 minutes, okay? It's just,
But I think, I mean, the CPC article doesn't, like you said, Roger, doesn't explain. It says, the article says a passive recreation park, but it lists things that it would, you know, include but not limited to, right? And I don't have it in front of me, but it does list specific things. So maybe that helps everybody. Roger, I don't know if anyone has it in front of them, but
yeah, I do.
you know, so it gives examples, right?
Okay, to include but not be limited to an ADA accessible multi-use loop, hiking/walking trails, shaded picnic and sitting areas, a parking area, and interpretive signage with such funds to be extended by June 30th, 2025. And so this does, I mean, are we okay with it not including fields? I mean, I don't think Accessibility Advisory Commission is in a position to somehow now do this thing from scratch and be the proponent of something that is more expansive to include active, because the usage, the legality of it is that the Engvalls, I don't think we'd be allowed to do active because
Isn't that moving way beyond our
Yeah.
charge
Ye-
to do something like that?
Well, I
Aren't
think
we right now just
right.
being asked to
right,
write a letter
Right.
in support of
yes.
this, this
It-
project?
Yeah, to your point, we are, and I'm simply saying that even if we weren't, the fact is that it wouldn't mean anything because nothing would come of it, because the the gift of this land was necessarily for passive recreation.
And
That
I
was-
think, won't this be the discussion at the town meeting, when this article comes forward, what is a passive
Right.
recreation park, what's the difference, so that the
Right.
town votes on the article, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So
we've
that
been
people who
saying that
participate
because-
understand what it is they're voting on at town meeting, right?
Yeah, I think that it's been used from the beginning to make sure that people know that that's how it was donated to us, right? And that people didn't have ideas that we could put in athletic fields and pickleball courts and a swimming pool and,
Ooh, that would
up
be
lake,
nice.
right? And so that's been how it's been right from the beginning, how they donated to us. That's what it said. That's
Mhm.
how we've been able to clarify to people of what we're kind of allowed to do there. And so I don't think there's going to be, we're not going to try to explain or differentiate the difference between active and passive at town meeting. I think it's going to, let people know what is included, right? And so I think that article giving examples, like CPC wanted it to not be generic and just say passive recreation, because like Laura said, like what could it mean? And so they wanted to list specific things. So like I said, I don't know if you referenced that from the article, that helps you. Like everybody, the fact that you're listing the examples, like I said, of it, or you're just supporting the article of the development of a
So
park.
let's get back to the main motion itself. And all right, so Rob Paulson only made a motion to endorse the fall 2022 town meeting request for funds for the article pertaining to an accessible passive recreation park at 95 North Street, and to proceed with grant opportunities. And further, that Roger Trahan, as chair, will write a letter to the select board CCing the Recreation Department and Conservation Department while sponsoring the town meeting article in support for the project, as well as funding. In other words, and so that means we're supporting the project and supporting funding, but and supporting, grant applications as well. I don't know if that would be duplicative, but.
I think it's fine, just the way you.
Okay.
read, Just as.
All right. All
as
right,
the-
so everyone can see this paragraph?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and, all right then. All right, so any further discussion on the motion? Yes, Christie.
Can I please move one word that we change the town meeting request to the town meeting?
Yeah, in other words, the
It's
town meeting is
already-
not requesting anything.
Yeah, we're not requesting for funds for
Or
the
funds for an
article.
article, right?
Thank you.
To endorse the article in the fall town meeting.
Okay,
To endorse
So-
the article.
so Laura, one
Thank
last
you.
time, are you
That's-
okay with
now we're
this
done.
wording? Laura,
Yeah, that's fine.
are you okay with it? Okay, I think it's important that on these type of things that they, to the extent possible, have unanimous support.
Yeah, no, it's fine, as long as it references back.
Okay,
And within the article, it says, not defined clearly as we just discussed, but
right,
it made reference to what we're talking about with passive.
right.
That's fine.
And the article describes the type of things that are planned anyway, so.
Yep.
All right, so any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none by roll call. All those in favor, Laura Denine,
Laura Janine, aye.
Christy Proctor,
Aye.
Berger,
Aye.
Catherine Dorr,
Aye.
Rob Paulsonelli,
Aye.
Alexis Henry.
Aye.
For hand, I declare the motion carried unanimously 7-0. Awesome.
Oh, boy. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right,
Roger, so I will, what would you think would be your timeframe on producing the
tonight,
letter?
I'm gonna get this done tonight.
Okay,
And the reason being is that by doing it tonight and then making sure by calling the town administrator's office, this endorsement should get in the select board's meeting packet for next Tuesday.
Yeah, so I'm gonna submit in the morning everything for the packet. So
Okay.
that would be great. And that'll be in front of them Tuesday. So
All right, great. All right.
thank you, everybody. Whew,
All
sorry.
right. Thank you, Jen.
Bye, Jen.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Jen, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. You know what's really cool? As much as we can go back and forth and agree and disagree about things, we didn't duke it out. I've seen some bad behavior in town on committees, and I'm like, we're not them.
It never will be. We're,
No.
we're,
Amen.
I was gonna say, is that
we're-
what we can expect, what I can expect on this commission? Maybe
no,
maybe I
you know,
should think
and-
about this.
No, and I also think it's good to have, different thoughts on it. A lot of us have been in different town positions for a long time, and some are new, right? So and we all have different backgrounds. So as far as I'm concerned, this is good. And not that I was going to not vote yes on this. I think it's important. I needed to fully vet and understand the points of it. So I think this was great. This is exactly why I think we're all here.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for your input. All right. Number 4, draft meeting minutes. Okay, so with the caveat that
I'll
Catherine
pull 'em up.
Doe was not here during that meeting and Alexis was not yet appointed. So the
So our
only,
last meeting was June 16th.
no, July 21st.
Excuse me, July 21st. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
going back too far.
Yeah. All right, so do I have a motion to accept the draft minutes of July 21st, 2022?
So moved.
All right, that was Mr. Berger. And do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Motion made by Bob Berger, seconded by Laura Denine to approve the July 21st, 2022 meeting minutes as drafted. Do I have any discussion on the motion? All right, then I will then weigh in on a couple of things. On the second page, on the regarding the email address about accessibility at grafton-ma.gov. Okay, that included and to communicate this in writing to Town Administrator Evan Brassard, which I did. So after seconded by Laura Denine, it was understood that I, as chair, would communicate this to in writing to our town administrator.
How did I miss that?
No, that's okay. And so what I did, I need to follow up anyway, because right now, and I think maybe it's just a matter of copying and having them copy and paste the Word version. And then right now, our website, 2 months after the fact, still speaks of Disability Commission and the old charge. But the meeting agendas and meeting packets reference Accessibility Advisory Commission, but only under the Disability Commission name. So I'll follow up with that. And the other thing is 2 pages after that, regarding nominating Christy Proctor for Commission Clerk. All right, right after the word clerk and then the semicolon, seconded by Laura Denine.
Right.
It was just, that was just a, and then on 4, right below that, update Parks Fields. The third line down, McNamara doesn't have an A, it's MC.
Thank you.
And then that's it. Okay. So for I'm going to then when I do the roll call and call everyone, the expectation will be that Catherine and Alexis will affirmatively be abstaining.
Correct.
So any further discussion on the motion to accept the minutes with the changes as discussed?
I have a comment.
Yeah, sure.
So, I've been looking at all the stuff that we're putting on paper and I thought we had a format that the town adopted, that everything has to be, Arial 10 or 12 and justified.
Mhm.
Do we know the format that the town's looking for? And do we have to follow that format as the committee?
And I don't know what, all right, so I thought that Arial wasn't the only one. I thought that, I don't know whether it's New Times Roman was maybe one of the
Ugh.
Did
scripts.
somebody just say,
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. So I don't know which ones were considered. I mean, the web content, the WCAG guidelines, do they speak to font size? And I
Yes.
know,
I
okay,
think
so
they do, and for accessibility, there's rules that we have to follow too.
Right.
I think that we're following as best as we can right now, but I thought that everything we wrote had to be justified. Why? I don't know.
right. Well, I know that our town report, I threw it in 16 font, and I think it may have been New Times Roman. But Christie, as far as font size and font, what is your understanding? Bob mentioned Arial,
No, Arial's fine.
but
Arial's-
is that the
Because
only
you
one
want
that's allowed?
sans serif, but it's the font size. You shouldn't have anything less. For readability, you shouldn't have anything less than 14 on a web page.
Okay,
People break it all the time, to be honest, Bob, right? And also you have to consider contrast. In these Word documents, right now, I can tell you what my accessibility score is for this document. And what I try to do is I use headings. So I use headings so that anyone who's blind can just go through the headings to find the part that they want to go further and have read aloud. So,
how big are your headings?
well, I have two, well, in Microsoft, you have two headings. You have heading 1, heading 2. So I use heading 1, and
Okay.
then I use bold as my secondary heading.
Okay,
It's just a thought.
No, I know.
okay.
I agree, Bob. I think there should be consistency. There also needs to be some it should be consistent, but it should be consistently accessible. And I don't know how to pursue that, or if we want to make that a thing to pursue for the coming year. I mean,
Mr.
it's so easy to do, but you have to set it up. And truly what I do is I just use the template. And as you can see, I pre-populate everything during the meeting, so I'm not missing the words. I'm not focused on, I don't get too caught in the weeds of, yes, no, yes, no. I assume everybody's a yes. It's easier to do that because, to be honest, we're a very yes group, but like, I know Bob's like, no, we're not. But anyways, I think it's really important for us to model that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to
Yes.
make a suggestion. Why don't you put this as a topic on our next meeting?
Okay,
I would like to go to the administrator's office or find in the town what our standards are supposed to be, bring it back to this committee to see if it's suitable for everybody else's needs. And if it's not, then we can make recommendations back to the select board or to
Right.
the town administrator.
so
I think
it's,
that's a good start.
so you're talking about font and script standards for content?
The
Absolutely.
minutes. Yeah, definitely the
Well-
minutes.
And it's not just our minutes, I'm talking globally, it's everybody's minutes.
Okay,
And we should
Although
include the website
document
as well, right?
accessibility.
Sorry, Alexis.
Oh, I'm sorry. So just general guidance on document accessibility kind of across the board. So it's a bit beyond font and and
Yeah, I mean, it's
size.
white lettering on
Type,
our
yeah, yeah.
Grafton, our love for green. Grafton green, it's like white on green and contrast and things like
Right.
that as well. Okay. So Christy, as far as the web score, you said that you score what you write, but have you recently gone on our website and tried to score it?
You mean to actually go to the website, pull it up, and then see if it's still accessible?
Yes.
It all depends. So that's where it gets personal, right? Because it depends on what browser I'm using and what software I have, but Microsoft Accessibility does have those features, so does Google. So I can try that out. I can do some testing. But the other thing you should all know, and this is really down a rabbit hole, so I don't want to go too far, is that WCAG is coming out with 3.0 now. So the web accessibility content and accessibility guidelines is moving from 2.0 to 3.0. It's going to be earth shattering for a lot of people. Yeah, it means that we have to pay more attention to content creation and what goes up on our website. Again, this is all voluntary,
Mhm.
but you know, we're going in this direction.
Okay.
I'm just happy we don't have videos from our from TikTok to post on in our minutes, because that would totally be inaccessible.
Okay.
And Catherine appreciates that. There are some really inaccessible things going around the web these days, you know, that are culturally, you know,
Right.
everyone's on it, and it's like they're so inaccessible for so many folks.
Right.
Even
Right.
even though they include automatic captioning, the automatic captioning is wrong, like most
And
of the
I-
time. And if it's embedded, there's no captioning.
Right.
And the disability community is having fits and starts about it because we feel left behind in some manners, and all manners, I'll say of that. So
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, along with that, it isn't only scripting words, it is color coding. And I think sometimes people use color coding as a way to categorize things, and it really becomes a mess, whether it's websites or church bulletins. You know, it's like, here's the blue on black section. Here's the, you know, there's some awful content out there, both on the web and in paper, that we could also work on. So anyway. But Bob, I will add that to our agenda in October.
Very good.
Thank you. All right, so any further discussion on the July 21st meeting minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, Laura Denine,
Laura Denine, aye.
Christy Proctor,
I
Bob Berger,
Aye.
Catherine Dorr,
Abstain.
Rob Paulsonelli,
Aye.
Alexis Henry,
Abstain.
Trahan, I declare the motion carried, 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 abstentions.
got it.
Okay. All right. You know, I'll tell you, I'm, you know, as I have my phone here and everything, I get so much spam. I don't know whether it was a mistake for me to, when I write our agenda out, when I put the agenda together at the end, I put my home phone number, my cell phone number, and my email address. And I'm getting a lot more garbage on both of those. And so maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe I'll create an additional email address. Just for matter of transparency. It's nice to have someone be able to reach someone if there's any issues, but it's become a nightmare. All right, so old business. Okay. Polling locations accessibility. So we discussed in the past about specifically the Millbury Street Elementary School setup, whereby in order to keep people from accessing as the primary entrance that side walkway that's accessible, the far right-hand door to the gymnasium, which has a few inch lip, was considered the primary entrance. And then around the bend, but the entire length of the gymnasium, and then in a sort of cubby hole was another entrance, a back entrance that is to a hallway outside of the gym and has a couple of spaces that are that have like a concrete block with a sign that has accessibility. Does not have van accessibility, and I know the parking spaces did not have an access aisle. My latest comments regarding, the features there, we didn't discuss, but I drove back there on election night just to check out the visual of what that looked like. As far as the upcoming election in November, we're on short time here. It's my understanding, and Bob, from an ADA, AAB standpoint, if something has a lip less than 6 inches, namely the door to the gymnasium, you're allowed to put in a temporary ramp, like a rent-a-ramp, so to speak. Well, and as long as you have that there, and it's below a certain height, actually you can do more than 6 inches, but below 6 inches, you don't have to have handrails. Am I understanding that correctly, Bob?
Yeah, but why are you even bringing that up? Because at the middle school, I think their best route was what they're using right now. They did put signage up.
Right.
And
You mean the elementary school?
Absolutely, on Millbury Street. That's what we're talking about.
Right. And so what I was thinking is, there was signage there. It actually didn't reference parking. Maybe it was assumed it says accessible entrance.
Right.
It didn't mention accessible parking.
No.
And so what I'm thinking is that it seemed to me to be so far away from that main entrance that it smacked of separate but equal. It was literally like 200 feet away. And so it smacked to me of, here's the accessible entrance, or here's the main entrance, and then the secondary entrance is the accessible entrance. And so initially not having been back there, when we first discussed it, I literally thought that the door was around the corner, the accessible door. No, it's the length of the gymnasium, and then some. It isn't even one of the gymnasium doors. It's at the other end of, well, not the other end of the building. It's a pretty big building, but it was the full length. And even if you could drive there, in my opinion, it was so far away from what is considered the main entrance that it seemed to be a separate entrance altogether, or even almost like a separate location. Even though both entrances go into the same space, it just seems so far away that it smacked to me of a separate but equal situation, which to me, it seems could be mitigated or addressed by virtue of either a rental or a purchase of one of these ramps that simply lays on top of or in abuts that set of doorways. I don't know what the weight of the doors are, but if you could also speak to that, Bob, for opening and closing.
I did not measure, the pounds the force to open.
Okay.
But accessibility isn't just being in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
So what you're proposing, in my opinion, just my opinion, is
Okay.
a little more dangerous than them driving in the back and going in that completely accessible entrance.
Mhm.
I have an elderly father that now is in a wheelchair, but before that he was in a walker. He's got
Okay.
a bad leg that drags. He
Okay.
wouldn't be able to make it up that ramp.
Okay.
When, a month ago, he wouldn't be able to make it up that ramp when he was in his walker. So
Okay.
that, you have to think of people with canes, with
Mhm.
walkers. The wheelchair could definitely get up there, but that's only one aspect of disability.
Mhm.
And I think you have more people going to the polling place that either have a cane or have a walker that would be more a more accessible route to go in the back. I do admit that the sign, which I did speak to Candy, and she's getting a grant for better signs, and I'll work with her on that. where it needs to show that this is the way for accessible parking. Because it said the entrance, and you're right, it didn't say anything about parking. And I was
Right.
surprised when I drove back there, I
Okay.
saw 2 spaces with the handicap parking.
All right, so there's no
Sorry.
access aisle. So how would the access aisle be addressed before the general election?
Then you'd have to turn it to 1. Instead of 2, it'd be 1.
Okay, all right, so for general election, do you think 1 is enough?
You have to take the parking lot by numbers, and then there's a mathematical calculation that you need 1 for 50, 2 for, these other numbers. And then if you got more than 2, then 1 has to be, but it doesn't say it has to be in front of that door.
Right.
It has to be.
No, I know.
So,
It's a tight,
you
it's a
have
tight, it's a
1
tight
there.
area. Right.
You have 1 right there, and you have others in the parking lot behind you.
Uh-huh.
So, this is something that we're gonna have to work with, but I don't think that ramp is the best idea. We could put a ramp in, but that wouldn't be the accessible route. And if somebody with a walker or a cane wants to, go up that little ramp, that's fine. We could talk to Candy about that, but that, in my opinion, should not be the accessible route, because not everybody's in that wheelchair. They're in the walkers. Maybe they're not even in the walkers, and they don't have a cane. But I still think it's.
So let me ask you,
better
Bob,
route.
was the lip for that gymnasium, and this is not necessarily an accessibility question, but it seems to me that the height or the lip on that with the concrete foundation was probably made to prevent flooding, right? And that's why there's a 4-inch or whatever lip to the building, so that if there's a flood, the gym doesn't get flooded. Is that why universally those things?
I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know. The building was under construction control. I think I just came on as a local inspector. I wasn't in charge of that building, so I didn't even inspect it. So that must have been in 2000 they built it, because I've been here since 2001.
So
that shouldn't have been there. That, what I'm trying to say is that lip
Okay.
should never have been there.
So is that going to be addressed anytime soon? There are 4 doors to that building.
I can talk to Tony about it, and see if they want to do something about it. Put a landing out there and then regrade it. So, you can walk right in.
Right.
But I don't know, but I will talk to Tony about that lip, and you can put that on the agenda. So we'll talk about that in October too.
Okay.
You probably have to email me the agenda so I don't remember, because
Right.
I won't remember anything.
Millbury Street Elementary School, lip. All right. And then the other thing too is as far as some of this may not even be an issue, regardless of what Tony may recommend, or even if something is done there, in that there's been some community discussion regarding whether voting should remain in that school anyway, especially on a school day, just for safety and order reasons. And that's for safety and order why what was that main entrance to the right, which was completely accessible, and then you went left, why that was changed. And then, but then with the accessible entrance in back, the door was propped open. So that led to its own issues. So Bob, what are your thoughts, or what have you heard? I've heard some community discussion about, whether this should remain the proper place. So maybe the accessibility discussion goes away if we bring back precincts 3, 4, and 5 back to the Municipal Center Gymnasium, for example.
Yeah, that's over my pay grade.
Okay, I didn't know whether that
No,
had come your way.
but I did hear that, I think Candy said on the presidential election, the school's most likely going to be closed.
Right.
So then we can use the main entrance, and then everybody takes a left,
Right.
like we
right,
did in the past.
Right.
Now,
And-
midterms, I don't know if they're gonna close the school for midterms. We'll have to talk to Candy about that. You want to put that on my list and I'll come back?
I guess that's a school committee question or a superintendent.
But
question.
Candy should know that answer.
Okay, all right.
Juju.
In other words, it may or may not have been brought up to her. Are you saying you're unaware one way or the other whether this may be in her discussions?
Something's in her discussion, because I know we talked about the presidential. I don't know if we talked about the midterm.
All right, because I know there's probably some time limits regarding changing locations and what the public, mailings and notifications of the public that, I don't know what the lead time is, 30 days, I don't know. That a decision would need to be made quickly if the location were moved.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking her. I'm asking her, is the school going to be closed in the November election?
Okay,
And then if it is closed, can we use the main entrance like we've done in the past?
okay. All right.
Sorry, so I was just looking at the school calendar. What date, is it the 1st or the 8th? The election day this year. So the 8th, there is no school, but they have K through 12.
I have, the hand is going up. Amy Marr, who's present as an attendee.
Oh, perfect.
Amy, I'm gonna allow you to talk. You know what? I'm gonna promote you to a panelist if you don't mind. Amy, hello, you're a panelist now. Amy Marr.
Hi.
Hi, Amy. Are you
Guys.
currently the school committee chair this year?
I'm not the chair.
Okay.
But I was the chair last year when we set the calendar. What normally happens is that we always close the schools for presidential. And this year only, I spearheaded an effort to close for the midterms. Primarily for safety concerns. We do, even though we have the entrances controlled, we do still have this problem of random voters wandering the building freely. We have one officer on site for the day, and he has responsibilities that pertain to the actual voting process. So we don't have like an officer station for security purposes. I do fully support this idea of getting voting locations out of school buildings. I think we've reached a point where between the accessibility issues, the presence of students in the building, the parking not being good on a school day for all the other elections that we have, despite adding those new handicap spots at Millbury Street School, they're not near the voting entrance. So that's not even helpful for them. They're near the school office on the other end of the building. So that's something that I'm really dedicated to working on once we get through this next election. Candy's aware that this is something that I'm sort of championing on my own. And I can't speak for the committee or the district, but the sense that I've gotten in the past from the district is that they too would prefer to see polling locations moved. And the ideas that have been floated around are the municipal center can do 4 districts and the new library community room could do 2. That's an option. That's fully accessible, correct? So
Yeah.
that would solve all the problems you all are discussing, and it would solve the school security problem as well. So I think it's a little early to count on it, but we have 2 years to get it done before the presidential primary, which will be obviously a large turnout.
And we haven't had any complaints regarding Bob accessibility regarding that. I mean, I think that I'm not aware that anyone was unable to vote, and we do have alternatives to same day voting. Not that people should be forced to do mail-in, but it's a lot more progressive approach and accessible approach than forcing someone to show up on election day and physically be there.
Yeah, I think that the biggest accessibility issue that I see as an election worker is the lack of parking when the schools are open. It's impossible at GMS. It's just as impossible at Millbury Street School, and they get out later. So now people have to wait to go vote. It's a whole thing. And I visited the senior center a couple of times and spoken with many of our seniors about the issue. But we're going to be redoing the municipal parking lot. So that's a good thing, right? That there will be parking for our seniors, parking for staff. There should be ample parking for voting.
Awesome.
So that's what we're thinking.
Mhm.
I'm thinking, not anybody else, just me.
All right.
But yeah, so, but thanks for letting me talk. And if you guys have any
All right.
questions,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rob.
Amy, are there parent-teacher conferences that day at the school?
so yes, there will be parent-teacher conferences at both schools that day.
Will that affect the use of the traditional exit, I'll call it, the bigger to the right?
I would say one of the only concern I have is whether or not there's going to be the after school care program. If
Right.
that is still going to run that day for the whole day for parents who need childcare.
Oh, okay.
That program is held in the cafeteria,
Right there, yeah.
which is right there.
So
So I think
if
there's some
that
moving
program,
parts.
so if that program wasn't there, it wouldn't be an issue because we're really about protecting kids, not adults.
Exactly. And
okay.
the doors on both ends are unlocked all day for conferences anyway, because parents can come in
Okay.
either side.
Okay.
So I don't think that would be an issue at all.
Okay.
But again, if Kidsborough is running, maybe we have to shut the doors and lock the kids in. I don't know.
Are you saying that it's possible to, I mean, it would be a kind of monumental communication effort, but are you saying that if this thing isn't running, it's possible to switch locations to, but if it's parent teacher, so were you referring, Rob, to the midterm elections are going
The
to be a
midterm,
parent
yeah.
teacher day?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was my understanding too.
Okay.
So we could, there's the possibility I could find out if Kidsborough, which is the after school program, is going to run all day. Because
And if
that I know that does happen, and those kids would probably be in the cafeteria, which is directly in front of that entrance that we used to use,
Right.
where then you turn left to go to the gym. My
Right.
hands are not.
Okay. So
Um,
it's possible then that the main entrance would be the quote unquote older accessible entrance.
It's possible.
Okay.
I would say it's likely, but I'm going to shoot off an email to Jay right now,
Okay.
and find out, because that would be the easiest, I
Okay.
think. And maybe those students will be moved to another part of the school. I don't know what the possibilities are.
All right. All right. And then regardless of whether that happens or not, we have some time to play with before well, the next municipal election is really what we would need to, and so that's in May.
Yeah, so just to provide a little more detail on that, we need 20 days to notify residents of a polling place change. Letters have to be sent to every household with a registered voter.
Okay.
So that is a gargantuan process that would take longer than 20 days.
Right.
So that's something that the town clerk's office would need to start working on as soon as possible. The other benefit that we get from moving is that the network is going to be better in those other buildings. When you have hundreds of students all running devices at the same time on the Wi-Fi, we can't use the poll pads.
Oh,
The service just will not be reliable enough. And I'm just saying that for myself, like just from what I've observed from the lag with just a few people voting and a few kids on laptops.
mhm.
Now we're 1-to-1 all the way down to 5th grade.
Okay.
So we have all those kids on laptops all day, for better or for worse. So I'm happy about moving it to the library, which is going to have a more robust network, and the municipal center network, I would think, would be able to handle just a few
Okay.
poll pads extra.
All right. So do you think that, so who needs to decide these matters? Can Jay just basically say, I'm in charge here? And if there's no issue regarding a kids program, that he can just say, let's move the entrance to that, that accessible entrance.
I don't think it's a function of Jay so much as it is, I think it's would it be the town? I would think it would be the town clerk that would decide that. I don't think
Okay.
that would be a Jay sort of thing. I don't know.
So is it an absolute no if there's kids in there that day in the afternoon?
That I don't know. I do not
Okay.
know the answer to that.
All right. So if you could just keep me in the loop on this, you said you're going to email Jay.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him if there's kids, and if there's not, then we're good.
All right, and then I can just let the rest of this commission know, what the updates are, and as long as there's no serial emails that go around that are, in violation, then everyone will be, I shouldn't be the only one that's privy to this stuff. The whole commission should be.
Yep.
So, and the public. So I appreciate your efforts in this, because it not only addresses, public safety, but the accessibility even before you get to the buildings, the whole parking issue and such and everything. So just let me know.
Yeah,
let us know.
I have a unique perspective because I'm on kind of both sides of it. I'm school committee,
Right.
but also an election worker. So obviously I want students to be safe. I want voters to be able to come in and vote anytime they want. I want better parking.
Right,
We want to be able to get people in and out. So,
right.
but anyway, if
Thank you.
anybody has any questions,
All
my
right. And if
email
you,
address is on the school committee page.
if you so choose to communicate with me, or it's still, the email hasn't changed to accessibility@grafton-ma.gov. It's still Disability Commission at
Okay.
grafton-ma.gov. So if you also have the ability to email the whole commission, it's just that I would just caution everyone not to get into a serial discussion. So.
Okay.
Thank
Will do.
you.
I'll let you know as soon as I know.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
All right. So, all right. So that addresses that. So Bob, I don't need to then.
Yep,
add
cross
that.
it off.
Yeah, cross it off. So it's just about the lip, about what could be long-term plans regarding that, regardless of voting. It's just those particular doors. And
Sure.
so, all right, thank you. Grafton Public Library Policy Subcommittee. I overlooked Christie inviting Aaron Vandersteen to this meeting, but you went to one of these meetings, the subcommittee meetings, Christie?
Yes, it was thrilling.
All right.
Let me see if I can pull up really quick their policy.
Yeah, and
And
I just want to just point out that we're approaching 8:30.
oh, I know, I'm going to be very quick. If
Yeah.
I can find this really quick. If I don't find it, that's fine. But I do want to tell you, it was just a small group of us. I'm not going to worry about it at the moment, but I'll make sure everyone sees it. But technically, the policy they have, the policy committee they have is a very small committee. It's Aaron, who's the chair, Kathleen Parker, Beth, who's the director of the library. She has a new last name, Schreiber, and myself. So we met August 31st and discussed at first the unaccompanied child policy.
Yep.
In regards to how a person with a disability who's older than a child could or could not have access to the spaces that they're not allowed to be, because technically no one under 18 is allowed to be in several spaces without an adult. So we talked about the policy itself, which was actually vetted by town council already. And I applauded Beth for the work she's done, because it's a very sound policy. And what I was looking for when I received the policy was a place where if you had a need that preceded or precluded the policy, that there was a name and contact person as a mechanism to bring forward a concern or an accommodation request.
Mhm.
The library is already very sound on having a mechanism in place for any accommodation request. And I apologize, I don't have the name of that person at this moment, because I believe it was going to be one or another person, but I'll share that as soon as I find out. But they really have moved forward in a lot of ways. And Beth admitted that they had looked at other policies from other libraries and really took the best of what they had and then had it vetted. I encouraged them to have one more sentence in there. And for the life of me at this moment, without looking at the policy, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something to the effect that there needed to be wording to the effect that if you had any other concerns, here's another contact, and it didn't have to be related to disability. To have a timeline again. If you can do this as soon as possible, we will get back to you within 5 business days, just some of those very specific pieces of information that help make a policy better, and to show the library's responsiveness, which they are very responsive in this matter. So we did talk about the unaccompanied adult with a disability wanting to use the children's room. Instead, we did some problem solving about that. And we talked about having in other areas of the library, including the adult section, for example, why not have a smaller basket of children's books? Because an adult may have to bring their child to an adult area to keep them occupied. Having other spaces where things could be included that would be deemed either sensory fidget toys or activities, passive activities, Laura's favorite word tonight, for coloring, anything like that, you know. So just making the library more accessible to everybody, and not just having one space for children, but making several spaces for children, because there are parents who are single parents who will have to bring their children to the library, who will need to go to an adult section and monitor their children while they're there. So really good idea sharing. It went really well.
Yeah, thank you for that update. It seems like you did a lot more than I was aware of, in that, yeah, that space is very fluid, and there are overlapping age groups too, and there's only so much square footage to accommodate all of those needs. And I really like how for a few years now they have affirmatively put on their website and have in action accommodated people. You know, it's on their radar, and that's borne out by their own internal documents that are accessible on the website. So so you're meeting again when October, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think we're meeting at the end of September.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. All right, thank you so much, Christy. Any discussion by anyone or questions regarding the Public Library Policy Subcommittee? All right. And Alexis, just for the record, Christy is our liaison, as I indicated in the we actually voted her to be liaison, and that was a continuation of her being our committee's liaison to the library building committee, which I think is still, it hasn't been dissolved yet, right, Christy?
Right.
Okay, so you got double duty. All right, new business. Just for the record, and we don't really need to discuss this at all tonight, because I don't think there's ever a hard deadline. I don't think this is going to come in front of town meeting till I think next fall. But the bylaw study committee, which used to be called, the last time it met was in 2002. I was actually chair, 2002, and then we met all of 2003, and it was fall 2003 town meeting. It was called bylaw review. This is called bylaw study committee. I think David Robbins is chair this time around. And they kind of guesstimated that the sort of safety and order section or subsection regarding safety and order 21-1 through 21-4, it pertained to accessible parking, yeah, disabled veterans or handicapped persons. Regulating parking areas for the vehicles of disabled veterans or handicapped persons, and then there were different sections that got into some really nitty gritty, and also referenced the Mass General laws. So that deserves a look-see to invite us to become familiar with our bylaws, that maybe there are some other areas we may wish to weigh in on, but I can tell you right now that the word handicapped persons, we can talk about that sometime. Okay, and how we refer to that even if we don't change or recommend changes to anything else, maybe the title of that is something that deserves a look-see. So that section that's in the meeting packet is simply what William Blake had sent to us as committee chairs, what they as a committee felt were the more prominent things that the various town committees would likely be weighing in on. So, and maybe we could at some point in the next few months, just take this issue regarding various bylaws as a workshop meeting. I'm just throwing it out there. Just let's take a look at this in the near future. Did anyone have any comments about that topic about the bylaw study committee? Okay, last but not least, I will add, and it's not on the agenda, Millbury Street sidewalks is a public hearing by the it's a virtual hearing by the Mass Department of Transportation between, I guess, Sean Michael Way and on Millbury Street, from Sean Michael Way to the Millbury Street Elementary School, and I'm not sure if beyond. They're putting sidewalks in on one side, on the school street side, and curb cuts, and so its improvements include new sidewalks and curb ramps for pedestrian accommodation, meeting ADA/AAB requirements, as well as striped bicycle lanes on both sides of Millbury Street, from Sean Michael Way to Crosby Road. That's next Tuesday, September 20th, from 7 to 8. We're beyond the deadline to submit public comment, but what I did is it's something you need to sign up for, and I signed up for it. If anyone else wants to sign up for it, I can send everyone the link. But it's not like I'd be able to weigh in, but I think it's certainly worth me attending. And does anyone else have any interest in attending that, or do you want to rely on my look-see?
Interested? I definitely need to check schedules first.
Okay, all right.
But
Yep,
yeah, if you don't mind
same.
sending the link, Roger.
What was that?
If you don't mind sending the link, that'd be great.
No, I'll send the link. I'll send the link to it's a PDF link to the website, but also there's a hyperlink for the DOT to sign up for it. So I'll send the commission members both those links. But it's entirely Zoom, and yeah, it works for me, 7 to 8 o'clock on next Tuesday, the 20th. So my only concern, and I hope no one does this, is as long as telephone poles don't end up in the middle of the sidewalk like on Worcester Street. But they're clear and wide, So does anyone else have any comment on that? All right.
No, definitely interested as well if it works. It's my neck of the woods, so I'm interested I'm interested doubly. So yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, after the meeting, I will start by sending that out, and then I'll get to the endorsement letter for 95 North Street. So agenda item 7, I'm just acknowledging the next meeting, Thursday, October 20th at 6:30, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, motion made by Christie, or is that a raise your hand?
I'm muted. Sorry, I'm making the motion. Anyone
All right,
want a second?
All right.
Second,
All right, motion made by Christie, seconded by Bob to adjourn by roll call. All those in favor, Laura,
Laura Janine, aye.
Christie,
Christy Proctor, aye.
Bob Berger,
aye.
Catherine,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Alexis,
Hi.
Roger, I declare the motion carried. Meeting is adjourned at 8:41 p.m. Have a good evening, everyone. Thanks so much.